everybody, it's Shelley and Brian May. You might be used to seeing us at this point. We're trying to do it once a month, but last month you were pretty busy, the month of November.
Absolutely.
So we skipped over that one. So did you have a nice Thanksgiving?
Yes, how about you?
I did. Quiet, right? A little
Intimate family gathering. With us, it's 6 people, so it's never too intimate, and it's always an adventure. But no, we had a great time, and it was just us, and not terrible to have to switch the normal routine. Just spend time together. So I had no complaints.
Good. So same here. It was just the kids and I, and some card games and stuff. So we ate way too much dessert because we had no one to share it with, but I'm not complaining about that either.
Yeah.
Went down to Jesse Cakes and got some really, really good tasting treats. So.
Good for you. Yeah, nice.
So basically, today we kind of hinted last time we talked, we were going to talk about the budget, and part of your reputation and what you do is financial stewardship. So I was kind of looking forward to this talk that we're going to have. Can you kind of give us a little bit of a background or your experience with the ways that it's helped the county, first off, especially as we've been going through COVID here, with just having your knowledge out there helping us?
Sure. You mentioned me, financial stewardship. Certainly there's a few other legislators with those qualities or capabilities, but everybody brings something to the process. And the thing that's interesting, challenging, dynamic about the county's budget is that there's something like 62 different programs or departments, right, that perform various things for Onondaga County residents, not just taxpayers, everybody who lives here. So the members we have all bring unique perspectives and necessary perspectives, even if we don't agree on each other's priorities. And I can tell you this past budget was certainly a time when some of those things were discussed and encountered. Those perspectives are essential to the process of making that sausage, right? And just it all matters. There are people who are heavily focused, and we'll talk about this in a bit, on the social service component of the budget. There are other people who are focused on the fiscal management and management policy, and others who have expertise in perhaps law enforcement or public health or environmental issues. All of those things are incorporated into this budget. Back in the town government days, we deal, and I really, honest to goodness, if I got to be king for a day, I would require every single person who gets involved at the next level of government, county government, to spend some time on the town board, particularly as a legislator, or lawmaker, town councilor, to experience the budget process, to experience the process itself, which isn't fundamentally a whole lot different, but it helps you understand revenue, expenses, and how those things work in relation to crafting a municipal budget. And again, there's things that in my back trail that I'm particularly proud of. I've never increased costs to taxpayers through a rate or through a levy. And amazingly, this time that didn't really happen either on certain levels. You learn along the way. I chaired public safety. That's the number one expenditure of local dollars in Onondaga County. Local dollars being sales tax revenue and, of course, property tax revenue. Okay. And so that was at the time, $80 million responsibility for county government. And from there, I went to Ways and Means. And again, you learn. Town government, public safety, Ways and Means, where you're overseeing all of this stuff coming in, and you actually administer the process of developing the budget. In and along the way, I think my favorite thing that was ever accomplished was the very controversial but wonderful amphitheater, where the county executive, the chairman of the Ways and Means, were very, and lots of people in the community were either very strongly in favor or very strongly opposed. And I happen to favor it, and thought it was a really good idea, but I thought too that folks who were opposed on the legislature needed some kind of reassurance that we'd be able to pay the bill out into perpetuity.
Right.
And the business model they presented was pretty darn good, but there was money they left on the table. I said, hey, if you guys are serious, let's put some skin in the game, and you two guys, chairman, county executive, then Joni, and let's take all of the extra money that we receive from the Oneida Indian Nation, which pretty much pays the debt service for that, and let's put it into a capital account that allows us to pay the bills when we hit a bump in the road. And then you go to people, top leaders in the community, can say, no, this will not be a burden to local taxpayers because we've got a way to do it. And we have over time built a very substantial stabilization account as a result of that move. And that's the kind of stuff that I do on the ledge, and I have done, and I think it's really mattered. But as far as the budgeting process itself goes, Shelley, with the year that we've had, the challenges that we face, we're down substantially on revenue. The last forecast was about $75 million for 2020, and money's got to come somewhere to balance. Okay, we've made and we've talked about this before, a lot of tough decisions along the way to get there, and to balance. And we're going to balance in 2020, and we have a plan to do so. But in building the 2021 budget, we have to be very, very conservative with revenue projections, which Ryan did, which I appreciate, and made that part of the job reasonable, because we set some reasonable boundaries for what we could actually do. And then on the appropriation side, because of the revenue limitations, we had to approach it with limitations. A lot of measures have been taken. We talked last time about what some of those measures were and how difficult those decisions were. But at the end of the day, that strategy is proving day over day that it was the right way to go in terms of working with the county executive directly, which is unusual, to manage the roster, manage austerity expenses in a way that can give taxpayers confidence that they're not going to get socked with some kind of shock bill downstream because county government, was irresponsible in how we ran the business. So that's the mindset going into this thing.
Right. And for those of you that maybe people watching this time that didn't watch last time, just briefly, because I know you want to get into the budget and how COVID-19 affected it, but you guys did make you made a change in how the process was working, and gave Ryan McMahon, if I remember correctly, you gave him a little bit more say than he typically would have. Right. Can you just briefly explain that again? So
the issue that came up, Shelley, is that we had been working together with Ryan all year on austerity measures to control expenses, pull back department budgets, freeze hiring, not use seasonal help, all those kinds of just obvious practical decisions. But you gotta make these tough decisions and stick to them. At the point you've done everything you can do, or have done everything that could be done, now it's down to what do you do with your people? And we were faced with two choices. One, lay off 250 people, just do it. And then we're going to balance 2020. We're going to use some fund balance. We'll get it right. Okay. That's easy. That's very business-like. That's whatever, but 2021's coming. We need these people. The roster's already down 800 people from, 10, 12, 15 years ago, 800 people. So we've learned to do more with less already. But obviously at that point in time, we needed to do more. So we got very creative with a solution with Ryan, the county executive, and created some limited authority to allow Ryan to do things like a retirement incentive, an early retirement incentive extended. We did it earlier in the year as one measure, but we wanted to do it again. We wanted to do furloughs instead of layoffs. We wanted to mitigate layoffs. So instead of Shelley, and it's been a few months, so don't hold me to the specific numbers. Instead of laying off 250 people, we laid off 17. We furloughed some people. We were successful with the early retirement incentive, and those decisions enabled us to get another month down the road and another month down the road and clarify the picture of how much fund balance, rainy day money, we're actually going to need to balance 2020, because we can't not balance 2020. There's a finite number within the budget process that we create to run the county, and that number's got to balance at the end of the day. So I'm very pleased with the strategy we put in place, and I'm very pleased with the result. Again, already lean and mean as far as the roster is concerned. So we had to do what's best. That decision was met with, unfortunately, a lot of political resistance. But at the end of the day, what we did was right. What we did kept families whole that actually work for Onondaga County. But most importantly, it was an execution of our fiscal responsibility with an optimal result. And believe me, the decisions made up until that point were already very, very difficult. So I don't like it when, kids come home from school, I shouldn't say this publicly, and they're juniors in college and they need an internship. They need a couple of months experience in the public sector working, and they call and they ask for internships. And I'm trying here, I'm trying there, I'm trying everywhere to see if I can give this student a opportunity to learn and prepare them for the workforce. That's a great investment on our part. And have to say at the end of the day, or to fail at the end of the day, just fail because we don't have the opportunity. Half our Department of Transportation this summer was delivering meals and PPP equipment to people and organizations. They weren't working on roads. They got all the roads done. Hats off to those guys. But they were also doing things like that. Same with the legislative staff, same with the county executive staff, all across county government. It was all hands on deck to address this COVID situation, which is frustrating to all of us. But the realities of what is being driven down to the county level is what it is, and we have to react to it and we have to respond. So again, Shelley, tough situation. Thanks for the opportunity to cover that for a second, because I think that's really important.
Well, and you're not going to please everybody, right, Brian? I mean, you just,
no.
So you make the best decision that you can make in the moment, and you go with it. And we talked last time, there was a lot of creative thinking outside the box, not just in legislation, but in business as well. So
correct.
Going back to what were some of the key issues you guys were facing in 2021 for like the revenue streams coming in, where's the money going to come from, missing money that we should have had, how did you guys work that out, or what were the conversations or solutions you had?
So really the way we worked out the revenue stream losses was just what we talked about. But, the difference between 2020 and 2021 is one day.
Yeah.
The problem isn't going away, right? The problem isn't going away. It's encouraging to hear there's a vaccine and things, but what we know right now is that the numbers are going up astronomically, and with the holidays, they will probably continue to do so for at least the foreseeable future. From a private sector standpoint, my day job standpoint, I'm praying we don't shut down, because we already did that once. It was brutal. It's brutal, and that's really where the rubber meets the road, and that's where my sensitivities lie. Is that if our economy shuts down, we have much bigger problems on our hands than balancing the county's books, right? And I take that very serious. And again, that occupies most of my life. What happens out there in the private sector, so it concerns me very much.
I mean, I was just saying that is a big fear. Most people, it's not a matter of if, they're talking about when. And and I hate putting negative vibes out there, because sometimes you're asking for that back, but people have to be realistic. And I know business owners who are setting up for being shut down. How are they going to keep it going, whether they can do something virtually or not? So,
right. And we all had a practice run this spring. I just don't want to do it again. It hurt a lot of people and hurt a lot of businesses, and it just, I don't know. But, really, our dry run in county government, all right, is 2021.
It's true.
Or 2020 rather, so, we're taking a tremendous hit on sales tax revenue as a result of the shutdown. We're taking a continued, so things rallied very strongly, right? Afterwards, things were great. But then I'd say, Shelley, early October came and a lot of everything just kind of went down. So the sales tax revenue is a problem. Okay. The COVID resurgence around early October, combined with obviously an unprecedented presidential race and its effect on our society, really put a halt to the economy and spending and things. So sales tax revenue lost in 2020 is a major issue and will continue to be an issue going into 2021. We have to plan for that. We have within the budget. We have to accept the reality of our collective fear, if you will, and the fact that people just aren't spending money like they would otherwise because they're protecting their well-being and the well-being of their families. And that's the right thing to do under the circumstances. So the right thing to do for county government is to accept that, adapt, pivot, if you will, to that reality and deal with it. Room occupancy tax. If people aren't traveling, if they're not using our hotels, if our destinations are closed, we're not generating room occupancy tax. Room occupancy tax funds all of the tourism marketing. We are quite the destination here in Central New York for shopping and certain things that go on. The amphitheater I just mentioned a minute ago, things like that generate a lot of sales tax money to fund our government and reduce property taxes. Because that's what that does. When we drive sales tax, we reduce property tax. That's a good thing for everybody. Room occupancy tax is down. That means that the funds we use to pay for the on-center, to pay for Visit Syracuse, the former Convention and Visitors Bureau, critical dollars are really decimated. That means we have to use general fund money just to keep these things going forward, right? Which is kind of uncharacteristic, unusual, but a necessity. State aid, okay? State aid. And before I move on from Rod, I'll say that the Convention and Visitors Bureau or Visit Syracuse, their budget was cut by Onondaga County 50%.
Can I just ask real quick about that? I mean, if people can't travel, and sometimes I always tell you, I feel like my questions might be coming out of left field or be naive, but if people can't travel here and we're promoting for people to travel here, and it kind of made me feel better to hear that it was cut a little bit, just because that money's going towards something that people can't necessarily do. Or am I missing the point of that a little bit?
It's solely because the revenue source isn't there. They're not traveling here. They're not generating those dollars, and those dollars specifically come from occupancy tax. So that overall number, Shelley's cut, don't hold me to this, maybe 30, 40%. And as the revenue, as a result, there's corresponding cuts to these other organizations. Now, early in 2020, we went through a process of formally requesting New York State allow us to increase room occupancy tax for the purposes of marketing the various destinations we have in the area, again, that produce sales tax and mitigate property tax. That has not been signed by the governor yet. Part of the revenue that we budgeted takes into consideration the fact that we're going to be having a slightly higher room occupancy tax sometime in 2021 when the governor signs off on it. Okay. And our hope is that if and when the economy loosens up, we budget based on reality. If we start generating more revenue than anticipated, because we have budgeted responsibly and create some tight boundaries for ourselves, then we will redistribute where the money's needed most. And as you know, in business, Shelley, and I know, you don't cut marketing when the going gets tough. You double down. So these are one of the internal conflicts that I deal with when I take off my private sector hat and put on my public sector hat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyways, that's a good, interesting point you just brought up. Thank you.
Sure. I, like,
State aid is the last cut. I should mention that because that's a big one. We know 2020, what the effect of a loss of state aid did to us. Okay. We are also being told about an approximate, or the forecast is a $20 million cut in state aid in 21. So we have to put that into consideration of the budget development too. So those are the big three sources. And then the fourth source is wishful thinking. We've all been hearing about federal stimulus that for municipalities, and if we're not budgeting for the possibility of that coming in, and if it does, it's another way for us to make whole some of these areas that took hard hits on the year coming. But federal stimulus is more than wishful thinking, but we don't have it, and it would be utterly irresponsible to think we would. It'd be utterly irresponsible to budget even an extra dollar of revenue on any of the fronts I mentioned without a good reason to do so. And that caused a lot of consternation among some of the legislators. But I think in business and in the public sector, you have to be realistic.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, if it comes in, then it's kind of like a bonus. When we talked in October, at that point, the sales tax numbers were higher than anticipated.
Yeah.
So it was, it was something that made it a little bit easier for the county. So if the federal stimulus does come, then at least you're prepared for the worst, and that can bring you something that is kind of
exactly.
So to go into the cuts, as far as if the money's less, where are you seeing maybe the cuts in 2021 as far as the budget? What did you guys end up talking about?
So the cuts are everywhere. the everywhere, across the board, without prejudice. This is very important. The county executive, the administration flipped the whole historical budget process on its head.
Okay.
Normally, the departments submit to the administration exactly what they think it's going to cost to run their department, their program, their agency, whatever, for the coming year, from $1 up. Because we made all these austerity cuts that I mentioned before through the year, what the administration did was take across the board, without prejudice, they made formulaic cuts to every single county department, every single county program, with a high level of consistency. That was important to them. It's important to us. They made adjustments where necessary. You can't do a formulaic cut to sheriff's road patrol or corrections officers that are on the correction side, for example. They're mandated positions based on how many people we keep in the jails and laws and regulations. So besides that, everything was just a formulaic, they called it a pro forma budget, across the board, cut. Certain budget lines, certain things were just cut. Give or take 20%, Shelley, okay? Within these departments and within specific areas within the departments. So the recommendation and the process, the recommendation for a process was different. That's what they did. It forced legislative leadership, Leader Irvin, me, Chairman Knapp, to reevaluate how we were going to do things within our respective caucus and our process. Okay. Normally we have departments marshal in and programs marshal in. We'd have a little hearing on each department that we want to hear from, probably approximately close to half of the departments. And then we go back to our respective caucuses and we decide what changes and what doesn't. This time they presented the formula, they presented the process, and all the typical questions we ask of an individual department were more or less answered by formula. So no departments were grown, no departments were received any gifts, zero, absolutely none. There was huge political consternation on cuts to certain areas, I'd say the smallest amount of consternation, but consternation nonetheless. And I'm a big library guy. I love going to the library, getting books, because I read so much that if I were to buy books, every book I read, I'd go broke, right? So, but the libraries, city libraries in particular, have been closed.
Yeah.
So it's drive up, it's curbside, it's the kids don't have access, and the kids have been out of school quite a bit. So during this whole COVID thing, so there were some legislators very concerned about the fact that they didn't have better access. They wanted to beef up departments that they just can't be open, right? That's the situation we're in. And as a result, we can't throw money behind departments that just aren't going to need it until we're able to open the doors. So there was a little consternation over that. Big consternation over the comptroller's office. Comptroller's vision of how that office should be built. You know, the comptroller is an independent office that monitors the fiscal performance of Onondaga County. And the comptroller wanted one thing. The legislature, the administration, did not or was not compelled to do anything different. He wanted to grow the office during this budget process and change the structure of it. He's a new comptroller. That's fine. That's his prerogative, right? I would never interfere with things like that. But because of our approach, Shelley, we couldn't say, okay, we couldn't go deeper because no departments were being grown, no programs were being grown, but for those where the most need existed. And I'll talk about that in a second. And then, and I'll talk about it now. Some of the departments that really needed help, Shelley, were, for example, daycare. Visualize a single parent with children who all of a sudden can't go to school. A single parent who, if they're not working, can't pay the bills, can't feed their kids. The demand created for daycare in this county and daycare subsidies so people could just work and pay their bills. The most productive people in our economy, right? Yep. The demand went just up here, crazy, right? We had to put a lot more money behind daycare. Foster care. Foster care is an epidemic in this county. I may have mentioned it to you before, I don't know. Foster care is a concern. When I came to the legislature, we were appropriating $6 or $7 million a year for the foster care program. The number for 2021, Shelley, I think is something like 33 million.
Wow.
Think about that. The genesis of the increase was the opioid crisis. That hasn't gone away, but we're talking about it a lot less because of other more prevalent issues right now. But beyond that is the economic strain and things that are happening out there. We positively have to address this. The kids are the future. They are. I mean, I don't want to get all high and mighty on this, but our children, the children of this community, are our future. We have to take care of them. We have to give them a shot. Foster care is the best way, and the demand for such is higher than ever. And unfortunately, because of law, because of all the regulations, the only solution we have for it is money, because money gets people to take these children. Money gets people to, and it doesn't get them to take the children. It gets them to be able to take the children.
It helps them support.
Absolutely. I misspoke there, but that's really what I meant.
Yeah.
Because it's a demand, and the people who do it are wonderful, and I encounter them here and there in my life, and oh my goodness, right? What special people. So anyways, two really big issues that we if we didn't beat them up, mental health, another huge area that we had to throw money behind, because that is what our community needs. That's we have to have this. Okay. So and if we don't, Shelley, those folks end up in our jails. And when they end up in our jails, quite frankly, they end up dead. Okay. A lot of them end up dead, and we can't have that. Okay. Forget about the business sensitivities that we have. It's not the right way to take care of these folks. Okay. It's not the right way to stop future problems, violence, crime, drug abuse, all that stuff. It get to the heart of the matter. Mental health, you have to deal with it. Okay. So having said all that, tough cuts.
Yeah.
Toughest cut of all, I mentioned the pro forma cut. As we discussed, it was a formulaic approach across the board. One thing that became very prevalent was that the formulaic approach to the Onondaga County Board of Elections department was against the slice of time was the middle of a unprecedented presidential year. So they're budgeted considerably higher to fund all the needs they have with primaries, more workers, new process, election reform to beat the band. Okay. Costs a lot of money. Next year is an off year from an election standpoint. So we had to do a couple of things. We had to adjust based on a lesser need. But because of election reform and minimum wage increases and all that other stuff that factors into this, we had to do it responsibly. And we think we did. We even came back with a little bit of a restoration afterwards because we wanted to account for the increased costs we know they have even against the prior. So they're getting more than they received in 2019, another off year. And I think they're okay. One other thing that came to light, and it's in the media, and I'm a coward if I don't talk about it right now today with you, is the fact that that office is run by two independently appointed commissioners. The cost on Onondaga County taxpayers for those just two commissioners to run that 16-person department, which I will never argue is seasonally challenged, really challenged with elections, is $300,000 a year to Onondaga County taxpayers. It's a lot of money, okay? And the reason it's a lot of money, and this has nothing to do with believe me, you don't read about me in the paper. I'm not a political person, right? It's not politics, it's not performance, it's not anything. These two positions, these two commissioners sit in a place on the county roster where they receive automatic raises every single year without respect to performance. These are appointed positions, okay? Because of longevity, previous longevity in those positions, the salaries have gone up from, let's say, mid 60s 15 years ago to six figures. And they just go up, they go up, they go up, they go up. And my colleagues and I felt that we needed to just address it because it was an artificial increase. And were it not for the pro forma approach, this wouldn't have stuck out like a sore thumb, you know? So we adjusted the salaries. It has created a maelstrom of consternation out there among folks who believe that these people are both election commissioners are doing a great job. And I'm not disputing that. I don't get involved in their business that much, right? Unless we have to fix their budget or something. For that reason, people are pretty angry. Okay, they're angry about the budget cuts to the department, even though it's an off year. They're pretty angry about the salary adjustment, which was $7,000 a piece. It brought them down to $93,000. There's so much consternation, in fact, that the county executive elected to veto that salary decrease. It was in the news all over the place. We haven't issued our statement yet, but Shelley Hoffman gets the breaking news. we're going to restore those salaries to the, that's hot stuff, Shelley. You are going to make it big time in lights if you do this. We're going to restore those salaries in all seriousness. Look, Ryan's veto, his decision to have us, his decision to veto this was sort of a plea to us, county lawmakers, to act together and do what's best for the community, at least in the eyes of others. I will tell you right now, based on a lot of different things, I think we did the right thing with the salaries. It was not intended to cause personal harm to anyone. it's business at a time where we have to make tough decisions. But at the same time, we're better than wanting to cause any kind of social uproar at a time when it's the last thing our community needs. We want better than that, and folks should receive better than that. So we're going to fix it, and we're just going to make the salaries flat going forward, fix that technical problem that stopped them from just going up without basis. When again, just for comparison's sake, county executive's managing 3,000 people, and his salary isn't too far off of what these guys are making. And again, their role is super important. We need fair and equitable elections. I believe that in my heart. But we're going to fix this because it's the right thing for us to do.
So I'm always, I love win-win negotiating situations. So just listening to you talk about it, you went from taking a cut to people getting upset. The problem was that they kept getting raises without. So if you do the flat, it's kind of a compromise, right? You're trying to find.
I'm reluctant to call it,
but at least it's a little bit what you guys were looking for, and at the same time that these people's jobs are not getting cut. But I'm sure someone's still going to be upset, Brian. There's no way to please the world, but from listening to you talk about it, it seems like you guys put a lot of thought into the fact that you're right, with COVID-19 and everything else going on, having people upset when you guys can do something about it, I think it says a lot. So just my two.
Thank you. And that's why there's a process. That's why there's law that governs this thing end to end, and it affords the public to weigh in. It affords the different branches of government to weigh in. It affords the community to weigh in. Although I was very disappointed to see the mayor of the city of Syracuse weighing in on that issue when we only seem to hear criticism from the number one benefactor of Onondaga County government. That's a dart, and I made it. I shot it, but I don't understand. But there again, Shelley, that's a perfect example of why we have a process and why everyone has a right to speak their mind. And if we're doing our job, we're listening, and we're going to fix it.
Perfect.
There'll probably be, some kind of release or information sent out on it today.
Perfect. So after talking all this, what was the end result? How did everything kind of work out with tax rates and things like that?
So historic, one word, historic. The top line cuts to this budget were $84 million. $84 million. That's what we needed to do to fix it. From a local dollar standpoint, Shelley, property tax, sales tax, the cuts amounted to $58 million. $58 million. Those are staggering numbers. It's never been done before. Hats off to Ryan. He did a great job. Okay. Hats off to all of my teammates on the legislature for, fighting our way through this. It got political, it got ugly, it got personal all the way through because this is a crisis, and to say otherwise would be disingenuous, to say the least. So it should be difficult for everyone. $84 million overall, 58 million local dollars cut from the budget. The county sales tax rate, or the county property tax rate, went from $5 per thousand to $4.99, flat for all intents and purposes, a penny less. The levy went up. The levy's a function of a lot of things. The levy did go up, but we held the rate, which is key, because when the revenue changes, so will the levy, okay? The key is getting through it, and that's what we're doing here. The sewer rate, which is also very important. We've talked about the sewer pipes and the takeover. In fact, our community, we just passed, another news flash for you, our community is next in line for sewer takeover, this area. Yeah, so, and that's attributable to Van Buren, Lysander doing a phenomenal job with its sewer maintenance, okay? And having that be a light lift for the county in the sewer takeover. So we're moving programs forward, good programs forward for the benefit of the community and taxpayers and ratepayers, but we didn't raise that rate either. Okay, that rate went up a pretty good chunk last year. We kept it flat this year. All right, we know what's going on and what our families are experiencing. Again, the scope was just incredible. The cuts were incredible. The conversations were brutal. Some of these outside agencies, Shelley, that are supported by the county, either formally or informally, because both happen, right? We appropriate dollars for an agency that does good work. Okay, my friend Chris Ryan, Democrat Chris Ryan, is just a phenomenal guy. Brought to the fore a great idea to restore some money that was cut from Huntington Center. Huntington helps families. Huntington has a program where they do some work to mitigate foster care, the need for foster care. What a great investment, knowing the pressure we have. So everybody got behind it. How wonderful, right? Got behind a good investment, just $10,000, but a great investment, move things forward. Ken Bush and I, the legislator for Van Buren, Camillus, in that area, put together increased funding for water chestnuts, because New York State, these are all the little things that cut it, okay? Our river gets choked in a year without the effort. So our soil and water department, county soil and water district, it will take money, additional monies from the county, and do its level best to fill in for that which the state will no longer provide or is not providing in 21. So, we're doing some really cool stuff in this budget, even though the rates have been, I'm sure spending has been reduced as much as it has, but we put the money in the right areas to make a difference for folks. And most importantly, at the end of the day, with all these cuts, services are not being impacted in a way that's going to really cause any kind of meaningful harm to anyone in this county, because that's paramount. And to circle the whole conversation back, everybody has priorities in my role coming into this process. Some social services, some, again, we talked about that. We put the money where it needed to be. This is the best example in the world of nobody's happy with the result, but my gosh, we voted, it's done. The votes, frankly, the vote sucked. It was a party line vote over politics, but at the end of the day, I know, and everyone who worked on this budget knows, that $84 million, a budget cut by $84 million was the right thing to do. It's the same thing you and I are facing in our households, and from a business standpoint, counties should feel the exact same pain. That's what the administration brought to us. That's what we worked with and approved. At the end of the day, I would hope it's comforting for everyone to know county government is living the way everyone else is, doing more with less and facing the realities that it faces. And again, tough process, in my humble opinion, a really responsible result.
Well, it definitely sounds like it, Brian, and I appreciate the time, probably close to 40, 45 minutes that you gave us today to kind of go over what you guys went through, how you came to some of the decisions you made, and you're right, it's the same thing that the people here in Baldwinsville, Lysander, that you represent, we're all going through it. How are you doing it? I talked to a couple contractors who said they were so busy in the summer and spring, and people are starting to tighten the purse strings up a little bit right now with projects and stuff, because it's unknown. 2021 is unknown. It's
unknown, and they're just being responsible and waiting, and we're doing the same. And if we have extra money, we move those things forward. If we don't, we wait, just like everyone else is, So I'm pleased with the result. There are things I'm not pleased with, but I'm not here to get everything my way. That's wrong. I think generally speaking, we all, and by we, I mean the Onondaga County Legislature, both sides of the aisle, did their jobs. and did it admirably and with their priorities in mind and all the little things that each of us bring as priorities to the equation.
Well, thank you, Brian. Like I said, I appreciate it. I love the information. If people have questions, Brian's pretty easy and available to talk with, or you can message me and I can get the questions to him to get your answers. But I think you did an awesome job of explaining as much as you possibly can in less than an hour to us. So thank you again.
My pleasure, Shelley.
Christmas is or holidays, I guess in general, is gonna look a little bit different to most of us, but I certainly hope you enjoy the month of December, and I can't wait to see what 2021 brings. I'm trying to be very optimistic, Brian. So.
Me too. Sooner or later, it's going to get better, and man, I can't wait. But in the meantime, we all have to do what we have to do, and so with that, I wish you a Merry Christmas and a wonderful holiday, and with you and your family, and look forward to talking again after the new year.
Thanks. Enjoy your day, Brian. Talk to you.
Thanks, Shelley. Take care.
Bye.